My name is Ann Purvis, and I am one of the leaders of the Toronto Field Naturalist Juniors program. Each week, this blog invites juniors to a challenge. Find something, observe something, draw something, figure something out. Then, the juniors are invited to submit their findings or drawings to be posted the following week on this blog. This past week's challenge was to find caterpillars or evidence of them, and you guys did a great job. So excited that so many of you are raising caterpillars. Go team! This is a great plume moth submitted by Sandra and Alexi. It rests like an airplane with wings stretched out. There is a scallop in the forewing that gives the wing two lobes. These are lined with hairs that make the wing look like it is covered with feathers. That's where the name plume moth comes from. The plume moth caterpillar is green and also covered with long hairs. It feeds on grape. It wraps itself in a grape leaf and feeds on the upper surface of the leaf. Sandra said, "I want to draw this interesting creature," and you have taught us how to, Sandra. This is a monarch caterpillar and chrysalis submitted by Karina and Sebastian. They have been raising caterpillars for a while now. Some of us have wondered, where are all the monarchs this year? We know that monarchs face many hazards as they make their journey to Mexico in the fall. This even includes hurricanes. They overwinter there and raise one generation of butterflies in the sunny south around March. It takes about 1 month for monarchs to reach maturity after the egg is laid. 3 more generations are raised on the return trip to Ontario, and it is the great-great-grandchildren of the original migrants that find their way back to Ontario. This is a hazardous lifestyle, depending on good supplies of milkweed everywhere and the absence of pesticides all along the route. Amazing to think the monarchs spread out from a 10 square kilometer overwintering site in Mexico to reproduce all across North America. We have 2 generations of monarchs born and raised in Ontario in the summer, and it is only the ones born after August 15th that migrate to Mexico. We have done a good job of supplying monarchs with milkweed in Toronto, and many people also raise them to improve their chances of survival. This means we will see more and more monarchs as the summer progresses. Tyler, Bryn, and Tora raise monarch caterpillars, and this is a picture of an adult monarch emerging that they submitted this week. And it's very cool to see that the chrysalis it looks green in the original picture, but once the butterfly is out, it's actually translucent. It's almost a transparent, clear, almost plastic looking case. Tyler also submitted this image here, and what we have are aphids that are actually feeding on the milkweed. So aphids are piercing and sucking insects, so they will jab their proboscis into the milkweed and suck out the juices of the milkweed. These ants are actually farming the aphids because the aphids produce a sweet sugar that the ants love, and the ants will defend them from any predators that try to attack the aphids. They're very fierce in this. So that's very cool. Thank you so much for submitting that, Tyler, Bryn, and Tora. This is a picture of 2 black swallowtail caterpillars. It was also submitted by Karina and Sebastian. The cool thing about this picture is that it includes what we call 2 different instars. A caterpillar is like any other insect. It does not have bones, but it has an exoskeleton which it outgrows as it gets bigger. It basically gets too big for its skin and must eventually shed that skin so it can get even bigger. The different instars, or stages or sizes of caterpillars, are often different in appearance. The early instars of the black swallowtail are black and white and look like bird droppings. The later ones are the spectacular striped version we see down here. I was working in our Pollinate TO garden with Tyler, Bryn, and Tora the other day. They are raising a black swallowtail too. A later instar caterpillar seemed to get nervous as we watched it and put up something that looked like antlers. This is called the osmetrium and is a scare tactic on the part of the caterpillar to try and look bigger and more dangerous. It is often accompanied by an unpleasant smell, although we didn't notice this. This is a cabbage white caterpillar picture submitted by Karina and Sebastian also. The cabbage white feeds on all members of the mustard family, including cabbage, kale, cauliflower, and all the wild mustards. Mustards can be recognized because each of their flowers has 4 petals in a cross form. This is a European skipper butterfly observed by Anne and Jim in Taylor Creek Park. All the skippers hold their wings in this way, with the hind wings flat like a moth and the forewings at a 45-degree angle to them. It's as if they can't decide whether they are a moth or a butterfly. They also have tiny hooks on their antennae. European skipper larva eats timothy grass, the common grass, where the florets form a tight bundle at the top of the stem. Timothy grass is also European in origin, so it's quite possible the European skipper and timothy grass evolved together. This photo was taken by Anne at Rattlesnake Point Conservation Area near Milton. The geometer moths are familiar to us. They are the inchworms that we sometimes see dangling by a silk thread from the tree canopy. We see them moving along by pulling up their rear and then stretching out forwards. Geometer means to measure the earth because that's what it looks like the inchworm is doing. We may not always see caterpillars, but we can be tipped off to their presence from the nibblings and trails they leave behind. There is a whole category of moths that are leaf miners. This is a zigzag goldenrod leaf, and this moth larva has mined the cells between the 2 outer layers of the leaf to leave this trail behind it. There is also a category of moths called the leaf rollers. This is a hop hornbeam leaf, but I have seen this on sumac nettle as well. Sometimes we might think we are seeing the work of a caterpillar such as this on Joe Pye weed, and it turns out to be the gnawings of snails or the cuttings of leafcutter bees. Olga and Daria found a colony of these damselflies in a stream near where they were walking. This is a jewel wing, and all the female jewel wings have this white spot on the outer edge of their wings. It might be fun to go back, Daria and Olga, or perhaps you already observed this, but the jewel wings have an interesting mating dance. They can also be observed, the black jewel wings, or ebony jewel wings, can be observed in Taylor Creek Park. A couple of weeks ago, 4 of our families observed this 8-spotted forester moth, all independently of each other. I had never seen it before. It was fluttering around our grapevine and Virginia creeper, and it turns out that is its larval food. I had never seen this moth before. Why was it suddenly so abundant that 4 of us all saw it in different places? Insect populations go up and down for many reasons. Sometimes it was super abundant one year and then crashed the next. Last year, for example, there were many yellow woolly bears around. There are many reasons why this might happen. In some cases, they might have encouraged the predator population to grow. The predators feed on them this year and so have reduced the number of adults that reproduce successfully. Both the caterpillar and the adult of both moths and butterflies are vulnerable to predators such as parasitoid wasps, funguses, etc. Anyway, ever since I saw the 8-spotted forester moth and learned that it lays its eggs on grapevine or Virginia creeper, I was very eager to search my hedge and see if I could find any. It was only yesterday that I spotted one out the window, and here it is. Spectacular little orange caterpillar. The final thing that we want to talk about in this slideshow is the gypsy moth. Here is one gypsy moth I found climbing our garage door. I think the clown face is quite comical. You can see the huge eye spots and the 6 pair of red dots and the 4 pairs of blue dots ahead of them on its back. We visited Rattlesnake Conservation Area. I already mentioned this. When we were hiking in the forest, one of the first things we noticed were these leaf shreds. There was a thick layer of these leaf shreds on the ground under our feet. We could also hear the faint patter as if it were starting to rain. This turned out to be the gypsy moth caterpillar poo falling from the canopy as the caterpillars devoured the leaves high up in the canopy. Finally, when we looked up, we could see how thin the canopy already was at the end of June. The gypsy moths were really going to town at Rattlesnake Point. You can see the gypsy moth egg case here. This is how the gypsy moths overwinter. In the spring, the tiny caterpillars hatch out and start to climb to the canopy. There are a couple of ways the city tries to control them at this point. Sometimes trees are wrapped in burlap. The caterpillars will shelter under there, and then the burlap can be removed. The second method is to wrap the trunk in duct tape with the sticky side out. The caterpillars stick to this and can be removed from the tree. Gypsy moth particularly likes oak trees, and we have many of these in Toronto. A tree can leaf out again after it loses its leaves, but this is very hard on it. We know that trees make their own food, and the leaves are the sugar factories where they do this. If a tree wants to leaf out after it has lost all its leaves, it must use resources stored in the roots and the cambium layer. These resources are then no longer available for normal growth, and the tree has lost a lot of time for photosynthesis while it has no leaves. This whole process weakens the tree. So the city does do aerial spraying some years in areas of the city that are dominated by oak trees and where the infestation is really bad. If you are interested in learning more about the gypsy moth, please watch the video below in this blog post. One of our TFN leaders, Monica Radofsky, works for the Forestry Department of the City of Toronto. She has helped out with the control of the gypsy moth and suggested this film might be helpful. We hope you will also check out the Caterpillar Adult Who Am I matchup game below. We would ask you to please annotate the PDF and return it to Anne at the email address where we communicate with you. And in next week's slideshow, we'll let you all know how you did as a group. Your challenge this week is to study flowers, to try and understand how they get pollinated. To make seeds, a flower must get the pollen from another flower of the same species to land on its pistil, the female part. Sometimes they use wind. Sometimes they employ insects for this. How do they make sure it happens? How do they avoid getting their own pollen on their pistil? Try dissecting a flower and draw or photograph what you find. As always, send us your stuff. We love to see what you have discovered or puzzled over.